Okay, so here's another Gamefaqs page, which is the whole video. You can listen if you want, or you could just skim over the article, your choice. As well as in the video, you can find the article in the description. Here we go. The long and short. The medium, too. I may have been a bit hasty in advising you to not bother with the prototyping process. If I spared any detail, it was only to optimize your chances of survival, and if you find yourself begrudging the absence of certain instructions, which if followed would have resulted in your demise, then I guess that makes two of us. Otherwise, you're welcome. But the fact appears to be that prototyping the kernel sprite before making your getaway may offer the only opportunity to exercise control over your new environment, a place known as the medium. Also, if prototyped with one or two sufficiently, albeit loosely, humanoid and or sentient elements, living or otherwise, it offers the chance to have all this explained to you by an apparitional guide through whatever sort of cryptic, sketchy doublespeak your choice of prototyping element engenders. In lieu of this, you may be forced to settle for my clear, thorough explanations and assiduous dissection of raw data. Again, don't mention it. If you've already made it to the medium with an unmolested vanilla sprite, well, I've already covered the bad news about this missed opportunity, and I will go into this further soon. Though to what extent this really is bad news, I'm not sure. I know only the result of my co-player's current configuration, wherein the sprite was prototyped once before the departure and once after. Which brings us to the good news, which is that you can still prototype after your departure and salvage the massively rewarding experience of haggling with an exposition-slinging phantom guide, so long as you avoid prototyping with terribly inert items such as a brass door knocker and your father's pornography collection. Actually, that might be interesting. If you are struck by the spirit of such experimentation, please do not hesitate to contact me about it. So yes, you can enhance your sprite in this way, but doing so after your departure will no longer induce this effect on the medium I alluded to. That can only be accomplished with one or more pre-departure prototypings. In fact, we can extrapolate that there are only so many ways to prototype a sprite. Tiers of prototyping in relation to departure, both before, one after, both after, only one, either before or after, none. Those occurring before will affect the medium through the kernel's hatching process and your guide, i.e. the spirit. Those occurring after will only affect the sprite. The effects this process has on the medium, or more globally the incipisphere, are still vague to me. They have to do with flavoring the forces you will struggle against, and generally all forces at odds with each other in this realm. It has given me some insight into the nature of the game, which again I derive through extrapolation. We appear to be engaging an instance of a dimension with a highly flexible set of parameters, and a series of objectives surrounding an equally flexible mythological framework. This framework seems to begin as a sort of blank template, and evolves with the player's actions, and likely further evolves with the addition of more host/client connections, and thus more prototyped kernels. I regret to say I can't be much more specific than that without loosely extrapolating further. There are plenty of questions that have occurred to me, however, questions concerning the kernel sprite which I've raised implicitly already, such as what is the effect of an unprototyped kernel on the medium, or a doubly prototyped kernel for that matter, and even more salient are questions about this dimension itself. Do all players worldwide make it to this dimension if they successfully complete their departure? Or is a unique blank instance of the dimension created for each new player? I have no evidence, but instinct tells me that it is closer to the latter situation. There is no indication of any other players present in this realm. Alterations in the realm seem singularly centered on the actions of my co-player and myself. If I had to stake anything on it, I would guess every separate client/server pair activates its own fresh copy of the incipisphere, or a unique session, if you will. But the quantity of players is a further complication which invites more questions. It seems the game was designed to suit 2 players most naturally, the server and the client. But through a mishap, my co-player and I have slipped out of the obvious tandem arrangement, and the only logical course of action to continue playing is to string a daisy chain of server-client connections together until presumably the chain is complete. Theoretically, we could complete this chain with only one other player, functioning as the server to my client, and the client to my current co-player's server, assuming he can recover it. The strange thing is, though, in our instance of this dimension, there are 4 receptacles for divided kernels, not 3. Does this mean we are destined to have a 4-player chain? How could the game know such a thing? Perhaps it does, and if this proves to be the case, I trust I will be sufficiently numbed to the realization. Okay, this next section is crossed out. I can consider nothing about this game surprising at this point, and in fact, from the first moments of play, it managed to deviate so far from my expectations that I completely forgot what my original purpose with it was. I had chances to test some information I obtained on good authority during the prototyping phases, but it completely slipped my mind. Instead, the game's catacombs securing the dark, twisting paths to necromancy were blundered into rather on accident. But perhaps you don't need to know any of this. Rethink organization? Lead may be waist-deep logorrheic sludge. Trim down. Blech. She's not finished with this yet. Geez, cut her some slack. Maybe you could go bug someone somewhere else for a while, or at the very least, somewhen else.